Danny Martinez pressed his face against the small window of the spaceship. Below him, the planet Kythera Prime looked like a giant green and blue marble floating in space. He had never seen anything so beautiful. The young man was only 28 years old, but he had already spent 5 years studying animals on different planets. This mission was different, though. This time he would meet aliens who could talk. Captain Lisa Wong walked up behind him. She was a small woman with short black hair and serious eyes. "Danny, are you ready for this?" she asked. "The Kytherans are not like the animals you usually study. They are smart, strong, and very proud. One wrong move and this whole peace talk could fall apart." Danny nodded. He understood how important this mission was. For months, human colonies had been moving closer to Kytheran space. The Kytherans were getting angry about it. Both sides had big ships with powerful weapons pointed at each other. If these talks failed, there could be a war. The ship landed on Kythera Prime with a soft bump. Danny picked up his bag of research tools and followed Captain Wong and the other humans outside. The air smelled different here. It was clean and fresh, but with a wild scent that reminded Danny of forests back on Earth. A group of Kytherans waited for them. Danny's mouth fell open when he saw them. They looked like giant wolves that walked on 2 legs. The biggest one was almost 8 feet tall with thick silver fur and bright yellow eyes. His muscles were huge and Danny could see sharp claws on his hands. This had to be their leader. "I am Ambassador Thrakka," the giant wolf creature said. His voice was deep and rough, but the translation device on Danny's belt made the words clear. "Welcome to our world, humans," Captain Wong stepped forward. "Thank you for meeting with us. We hope to find peace between our peoples." The Kytherans led them to a large building made of white stone. Inside, everything was bigger than human size. The chairs, tables, and doors were all made for creatures much taller than people. Danny felt very small. That night, Danny tried to sleep in the room the Kytherans had given him. But strange sounds kept waking him up. They were long, sad howls that seemed to come from all over the city. He had heard wolves howl before, but this was different. These howls sounded full of worry and pain. A loud knock came at his door. Danny opened it to find Ambassador Thrakka standing outside. The big alien looked tired and upset. "Human Danny," Thrakka said, "I need your help with something. Our cubs have not slept for 3 days. They cry and howl all night. Our elder matriarch Vesra says it might be a bad sign. She thinks something terrible will happen." Danny followed the ambassador through the dark streets. Other Kytherans were walking around too, all looking worried. They came to a large building with soft lights glowing inside. "This is our nursery," Thrakka explained. "All the young ones of our pack live here until they are old enough to fight." Inside the building, Danny saw something amazing. There were about 12 young Kytherans, each one about the size of a large dog. They had fluffy fur and big eyes, but they were all awake and making sad noises. Adult Kytherans stood around them trying to calm them down, but nothing worked. "May I go closer to them?" Danny asked. Thrakka looked surprised. "You are not afraid? They are young, but they still have claws and teeth." "I work with animals all the time," Danny said. "I think they are beautiful." Danny walked slowly toward the cubs. The moment they saw him, something strange happened. The crying stopped. All 12 cubs turned to look at the human. Their big eyes seemed curious instead of scared. Danny sat down on the floor. One brave cub came closer, sniffing the air around him. Then another one came, and another. Soon all the cubs were sitting in a circle around Danny. They looked relaxed for the first time in days. "This is impossible," whispered one of the adult Kytherans. But it got even more impossible. One by one, the cubs started to lie down. They curled up in balls of fur just like puppies. Within 10 minutes, all of them were fast asleep. The adult Kytheran stared at Danny like he had done magic. Ambassador Thrakka's mouth hung open. "How did you do that?" he asked. "I don't know," Danny said honestly. "I just sat here." An old female Kytheran came forward. She was smaller than the others, with gray fur and kind eyes. "I am Matriarch Vesra," she said. "In all my years, I have never seen anything like this. The cubs trust you completely. But why?" Danny stayed in the nursery that night. Every time he tried to leave, the cubs would wake up and start crying again. So he slept on the floor, surrounded by a pile of sleeping alien babies. In the morning, the biggest Kytheran Danny had ever seen came to the nursery. This one was over 8 feet tall with black fur and scars on his arms. His yellow eyes looked fierce and dangerous. "I am Alpha Granvex," the giant said, "leader of all packs on this world. I hear you made my cubs sleep. Danny stood up slowly. He felt very small next to this massive creature. Yes, sir, but I don't understand how or why. Alpha Gronvex walked over to where his own cub was sleeping. The little one was curled up right next to where Danny had been sitting. The Alpha's expression was confused and maybe a little worried. For 3 days nothing could calm them, the Alpha said. Our best healers tried everything. Our strongest warriors sang the old songs. Nothing worked. Then you, a small human, sit down and they sleep like newborns. One of the cubs woke up and saw Danny. It made a happy noise and ran over to him, rubbing against his leg like a friendly cat. Alpha Gronvex watched this with amazement. This changes things, the Alpha said quietly. If our cubs trust you, maybe there is hope for peace between our kinds. Danny picked up the friendly cub. It was warm and soft, and it made a purring sound. He looked up at the massive Alpha and saw something new in those fierce yellow eyes. It might have been respect. Outside, Captain Wong was probably wondering where her scientist had gone. The peace talks would start again soon. But here in the nursery, surrounded by sleeping alien babies and their amazed parents, Danny felt like he had found something more important than any treaty. He had found a bridge between two very different worlds. Danny woke up the next morning with a pile of furry cubs sleeping on top of him. His back hurt from sleeping on the hard floor, but he couldn't help smiling. The little Kitherans were so peaceful when they slept. Their parents stood around watching him with wonder in their eyes. Dr. Amy Foster found him there an hour later. She was the ship's scientist who studied how different creatures' bodies worked. Her red hair was messy and her green eyes were wide with surprise. "Danny, what are you doing?" she asked. "Captain Wong is looking everywhere for you. The peace talks start in 2 hours and you missed breakfast." "I had to stay," Danny explained quietly, trying not to wake the cubs. "Every time I tried to leave, they would wake up and start crying." Amy knelt down next to him. She pulled out a small device that could measure chemicals in the air. "This is incredible. I'm reading some very interesting things here. Danny, I think you're giving off some kind of smell that calms them down." "You mean like a perfume?" Danny asked. "Not exactly. All animals make natural chemicals called pheromones. They're like invisible messages that other animals can smell. Humans make them too, but we don't notice them much. The cubs might be smelling something from you that makes them feel safe." Ambassador Throck-Ka came over to them. "Dr. Foster, what are you discovering?" Amy looked at her device again. "It's just a guess right now. But I think Danny's body is making chemicals that remind the cubs of something good. Maybe safety or family." Matriarch Vesra nodded slowly. "There are old stories among our people. Legends about small creatures who could bring peace to the young. We always thought they were just tales to help cubs sleep." Danny carefully moved one cub off his leg. "But why would human chemicals affect alien babies? We're from completely different worlds." "That's what we need to find out," Amy said. "Can I take some tests?" "Nothing that will hurt, just small samples of air around you and maybe some saliva." Meanwhile, the peace talks were not going well. In a big meeting room, Captain Wong sat across from Alpha Gronvex and other Kitheran leaders. Admiral Jake Phillips, the human military commander, wanted to put human bases in Kitheran space. The Kitherans thought this was an invasion. "Your ships are already too close to our hunting grounds," Alpha Gronvex growled. "Now you want to build fortresses in our territory?" "They're not fortresses," Admiral Phillips said. "They're research stations and supply stops. We're exploring the galaxy, not trying to take your land." "You say this now," said another Kitheran leader. "But what happens when more humans come? When your research stations become cities? When your cities become armies?" Captain Wong tried to keep everyone calm. "We understand your concerns. Maybe we can find a compromise. Shared stations instead of purely human ones?" But the Kitherans didn't trust this idea. Some humans didn't like it either. Admiral Phillips thought the wolf-like aliens were savage beasts who only understood strength. Some Kitherans thought humans were weak and sneaky. Back in the nursery, Amy was making discoveries. She had set up several machines around Danny while he played with the cubs. The little aliens seemed to love having him there. They would bring him their toys and curl up next to him when they got tired. "This is amazing," Amy said, looking at her results. "Danny, your body is making a chemical that's almost identical to something Kitheran mothers produce when they're nursing. No wonder the cubs feel safe around you." "But how is that possible?" Danny asked. "Humans and Kitherans evolved on different planets, millions of light years apart. An old Kitheran scientist named Technor had been watching their tests. Perhaps not so different," he said. Long ago, before we traveled to the stars, traders told stories of many worlds with similar life. Maybe our ancestors faced the same challenges. Amy nodded. It makes sense. Both Earth and Kythera have forests, pack hunters, and seasons. If early humans and early Kytherans had to survive similar dangers, evolution might have created similar solutions. That afternoon, something else surprising happened. Danny realized he was feeling different too. Usually he got nervous around new people or in strange places. But here with the cubs, he felt calm and confident. When Alpha Gronvex asked him questions, Danny answered without feeling scared. The bonding goes both ways, Amy observed. The cubs' presence is affecting you too, Danny. Your stress levels are lower than I've ever seen them. Matriarch Ves Ra was very interested in this. Our legends speak of this as well. The small ones who brought peace didn't just calm our cubs. They found peace themselves. Word about Danny's gift began to spread through the Kytheran city. More families brought their cubs to see the strange human who could make them sleep. Soon, Danny had dozens of little aliens following him around during the day. They played games, learned simple words in each other's languages, and took naps together. The adult Kytherans watched this with growing amazement. Their cubs were usually shy around strangers and aggressive with other pack's children. But around Danny, cubs from different families played together peacefully. "Look at them," whispered one Kytheran mother. "My little one is sharing food with the alpha's cub. I've never seen such a thing." This started to change how some Kytherans thought about humans. If their most precious cubs trusted these strange aliens, maybe humans weren't so bad after all. Some humans on the ship heard about Danny's success and came to see for themselves. They found him sitting in a circle with 12 Kytheran cubs, teaching them to draw pictures. The sight was so unusual that several humans just stood and stared. "They're not monsters," said one human soldier. "They're just big puppies." But the peace talks were still in trouble. Admiral Phillips got angry reports from human colonies about Kytheran ships being seen near human space. Alpha Gronvex heard stories about human scouts mapping Kytheran worlds without permission. "Someone is trying to start trouble," Captain Wong told Amy privately. "These reports don't make sense. Neither side should be in the other's territory right now." Amy was too excited about her research to worry much about politics. "Captain, what we're discovering here could change everything. This bonding between Danny and the cubs isn't just cute. It's proof that our species can work together, maybe even need each other." That night, Danny slept in the nursery again. But this time, he didn't feel like he was doing the cubs a favor. He felt like they were helping him too. For the first time in his life, he felt like he truly belonged somewhere. Alpha Gronvex came to check on the cubs before they slept. He found Danny reading them a story from Earth about a boy and his dog. The cubs listened with wide eyes even though they didn't understand all the words. "You care for them like they are your own pack," the Alpha observed. "They feel like family now," Danny admitted. "Is that strange?" Alpha Gronvex was quiet for a long moment. "Not strange. Hopeful. If a human can love Kytheran cubs, and if our cubs can trust a human, then maybe our species are not so different." But outside the peaceful nursery, dark forces were moving. Ships without markings were attacking both human and Kytheran outposts, making each side think the other had broken the peace. Soon this fragile new friendship would be tested by fire. Danny was teaching the cubs a new game when the emergency alarm started blaring. The loud noise scared the little aliens, and they all ran to hide behind him. Through the nursery windows, he could see Kytheran adults running in the streets with weapons in their hands. Ambassador Thruk-Ka burst through the door, his silver fur standing up with anger. "Human ship," he growled. "Human ship attacked our mining station on the third moon. 12 Kytherans are dead." Danny's heart sank. "That's impossible. All our ships are here or back at the colonies. The survivors saw human markings on the hull. Human weapons burned our people." Thrukka's yellow eyes blazed with fury. "Your Admiral Phillips lied to us. You came here to distract us while your real fleet attacked our worlds." Captain Wong arrived a few minutes later, looking just as upset. "Danny, we need to get back to the ship. The Kytherans think we're responsible for attacking their moon base." "But we didn't do it," Danny protested. The cubs around him sensed his distress and began making worried noises. "I know that and you know that, but they don't believe us anymore," Captain Wong said. "Admiral Phillips is already ordering our ships to prepare for battle. He thinks the Kytherans attacked one of our supply convoys 3 hours ago." Danny couldn't believe what he was hearing. That doesn't make sense either. Why would they attack us while we're here talking peace? Amy Foster ran into the nursery with her computer tablet. Her face was pale with worry. It gets worse. I'm tracking unusual energy signatures from both attack sites. The weapons used don't match either human or Ketheran technology exactly. What does that mean? Captain Wong asked. Someone else is out there. Someone who wants humans and Ketherans to fight each other. But it was too late to explain this to the angry Ketherans. Alpha Gronvek stormed into the nursery with 6 warrior guards. His black fur was bristling with rage and his claws were extended. Take your human spy and leave our world, he commanded. The peace talks are over. If any human ship comes near Ketheran space again, we will destroy it. The cubs could feel the anger and fear from all the adults around them. They started crying and howling, just like they had before Danny arrived. But this time, even his presence couldn't calm them completely. The bond between species was being poisoned by suspicion and hate. Please listen, Danny begged Alpha Gronvex. Look at your cubs. They know I would never hurt them. They know humans aren't their enemies. Cubs are easily fooled, the Alpha replied coldly. I should have remembered that humans are clever with their tricks. As the humans were escorted back to their ship, Danny looked back at the nursery. The cubs were pressed against the windows, their little paws on the glass crying for him to come back. It broke his heart to leave them. On the ship, Admiral Phillips was furious. I knew this would happen. You can't trust these alien beasts. They probably planned this attack from the beginning. Sir, there's evidence that someone else is behind these attacks, Amy tried to explain. Evidence? Phillips scoffed. The evidence is dead colonists and destroyed stations. The Ketherans want a war and now they'll get one. But Captain Wong wasn't convinced. She pulled Danny and Amy aside in private. Tell me more about these energy signatures. Amy showed them her data on the computer. The weapons used human-style particle beams, but with Ketheran-style energy modulation. It's like someone tried to copy both technologies but didn't get either one exactly right. So a third party is framing both sides, Captain Wong concluded. But who? And why? Their answer came sooner than expected. Matriarch Ves Ra contacted their ship using a secret communication channel. The old Ketheran looked tired and scared. Human Captain Wong, she said quietly, I believe you speak truth about the attacks. Our young ones still cry for your Danny. Cubs do not lie with their hearts. But I have worse news. Our sacred breeding grounds on the moon Velthara are under attack right now. By humans? Captain Wong asked. By ships we cannot identify. They hide behind sensor shields and attack without warning. Hundreds of our cubs are trapped in the breeding caves. They are too young to travel and too scared to move without... She looked directly at Danny. Without a calming presence. Danny understood immediately. You need me to help evacuate them. It is too dangerous, Ves Ra said. But without human scent to calm them, the cubs will not leave the caves. If the attackers destroy the moon, an entire generation of our people will die. Captain Wong faced an impossible choice. Admiral Phillips had forbidden any contact with Ketherans. Going to Velthara would be disobeying direct orders, but letting hundreds of innocent cubs die was unthinkable. How long do we have? She asked. Perhaps 6 hours before the attackers break through our defenses, Ves Ra replied. Danny didn't hesitate. I have to go. Those cubs need me. You could be walking into a trap, Captain Wong warned. Some Ketherans still think you're a spy. Alpha Gronvex doesn't, said a new voice. The massive black-furred leader appeared on the communication screen beside Ves Ra. I have seen how my cub looks at the human Danny. There is no deception in such trust. If he will come, I will protect him with my life. Amy looked at her research data again. Captain, I'm reading massive stress indicators from the Ketheran communications. Their emotional distress is off the charts. If Danny doesn't go and those cubs die, any chance of peace between our species dies with them. Outside their ship, space was filling with warships from both sides. Human and Ketheran fleets were moving into position for what could become the biggest space battle in galactic history. Both sides thought the other had started the fighting, but hidden in the darkness between the stars, other ships watched and waited. Commander Rick Stone of the Hegemony smiled as his plan unfolded perfectly. The Hegemony was a group of alien species that had been watching humans and Ketherans with fear and jealousy. These two species were strong and growing stronger. If they became allies, they could threaten hegemony control of this part of the galaxy. Let them destroy each other, Stone told his officers. When they're both weak and broken, we'll move in and claim their worlds. The hegemony had been conducting the false flag attacks, using stolen technology to make each side think the other was responsible. Now they just had to sit back and watch the war begin. Back on the human ship, Captain Wong made her decision. We're going to Velthara. I won't let children die because of politics. The Admiral will have us all court-martialed, one officer warned. Then we'll be court-martialed for doing the right thing, Wong replied firmly. Danny gathered his equipment while Amy prepared her research gear. They didn't know if this would be a rescue mission or a suicide mission, but they knew they had to try. As their ship changed course toward the Ketharan moon, Alpha Gronvex's battlecruiser moved to join them. For the first time in galactic history, human and Ketharan ships were flying together as allies instead of enemies. Behind them, the two main fleets continued preparing for war, unaware that their real enemy was laughing in the shadows. The moon Velthara looked like a giant crystal ball floating in space. Its surface was covered with beautiful formations that sparkled in the light of the nearby star. But as Danny's ship got closer, he could see dark scars across the crystal plains where bombs had fallen. The breeding caves are deep underground, Alpha Gronvex explained through the communication system. Our ancestors carved them into the moon's core thousands of years ago. The cubs are safe from orbital bombardment there, but if the attackers land ground troops... Captain Wong studied the tactical display. I'm reading 12 unknown ships in orbit. They're using some kind of stealth technology that makes them hard to target. And there, Amy pointed to her scanner, energy signatures from the surface. Someone has already landed and is fighting their way toward the caves. Danny felt sick with worry. He thought about all the little cubs he had played with on Cathera Prime. Now hundreds more just like them were trapped underground, probably terrified and crying for their parents. Alpha Gronvex's ship, the howling wind, was 3 times bigger than the human vessel. It looked like a giant metal wolf with weapon ports along its sides. My warriors are ready to fight, the Alpha announced. But we must move quickly. The cubs will not leave the deep caves without a calming presence. How many cubs are we talking about? Danny asked. Matriarch Vesra's voice came over the radio from Cathera Prime. Nearly 400. The next generation of 6 different packs. They range in age from newborns to young adults ready for their first hunt. 400 cubs. Danny tried to imagine that many frightened alien children hiding in dark caves while explosions shook the ground above them. His hands trembled as he checked his equipment. The 2 ships approached Velthara together. As they got closer, the unknown attackers opened fire. Bright energy beams shot through space, trying to destroy the rescue ships before they could land. Incoming missiles, shouted the human pilot. The howling wind moved in front of the smaller human ship, using its armor to block the attack. Ketharan warriors fired back with their own weapons, and 3 enemy ships exploded in bright flashes. They're not expecting us to work together, Captain Wong observed. Their formation is designed to fight one fleet or the other, not both. Alpha Gronvex's tactical officer agreed. Human ships are fast and precise. Our ships are strong and aggressive. Together we cover each other's weaknesses. They fought their way to the moon's surface and landed near the entrance to the cave system. Danny could hear the fighting even before he stepped off the ship. Explosions echoed across the crystal plains, and laser fire lit up the underground passages. The Ketharan warriors were magnificent to watch. They moved like a real wolf pack, covering each other and striking from unexpected angles. Their claws could tear through metal, and their powerful legs let them jump incredible distances. But the enemy soldiers were tough too. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that fired streams of burning plasma. Danny couldn't see their faces behind their helmets, but they fought with the cold efficiency of machines. The cubs are 3 levels down, Alpha Gronvex reported as they advanced through the tunnels. My people are holding the enemy at the 2nd level, but they won't last much longer. The crystal walls of the caves were beautiful, even in the middle of battle. They glowed with their own inner light, casting rainbow colors everywhere. But that beauty was being destroyed by weapon fire and explosions. Danny heard them before he saw them. The sound of hundreds of cubs crying and howling echoed up from the deep tunnels. It was the most heartbreaking sound he had ever heard. These weren't the happy cubs from the nursery. These were children in terror calling for parents who might never come. We have to get down there, Danny said, starting toward the lower levels. Too dangerous. Alpha Gronvex grabbed his arm. My warriors must clear the enemy first, but Danny pulled free. Every minute we wait, those cubs get more scared. If they panic completely, we might never be able to move them. Amy followed him down the tunnel. I'm coming too. If this bonding effect has limits, we need to understand them. The lower tunnels were darker and more maze-like. Danny could feel the fear in the air like a thick fog. The cubs' cries got louder as they went deeper, but they also heard something else. Adult Kytheran voices trying to calm the young ones. "Help is coming," one voice said. "The alpha fights for us above." "But the small ones won't move," another voice replied. "They huddle together and won't come to the evacuation tunnels." Danny reached the main breeding chamber and gasped. It was enormous, carved from a single piece of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. But the beautiful space was filled with chaos. Hundreds of cubs clustered together in the center of the room, crying and shaking with fear. Adult Kytherans moved around them, trying to organize an evacuation, but the cubs refused to budge. The moment Danny stepped into the chamber, something magical happened. The nearest cubs caught his scent and looked up. Their crying became quieter. Then more cubs noticed him and more. Within minutes, the deafening howls had become soft whimpers. "Impossible," whispered one of the adult Kytherans. "A human? Here." Danny walked slowly toward the mass of frightened cubs. They parted to let him through, reaching out to touch him as he passed. His presence was like a wave of calm spreading through the room. "It's okay," he said softly, even though most of them couldn't understand his words. "You're going to be safe." The cubs seemed to understand his tone, if not his language. They began following him toward the evacuation tunnels. The adult Kytherans watched in amazement as hundreds of cubs formed an orderly line behind the small human. But their escape was interrupted by explosions from above. The enemy had broken through the second level and was advancing toward the breeding chambers. "They're coming," Alpha Gronvex's voice crackled over the radio. "Can you move the cubs?" "We're trying," Captain Wong replied. But there are so many of them. Heavy footsteps echoed in the tunnels above. The enemy soldiers were getting closer. Some of the cubs heard the noise and started to panic again, breaking formation. Danny realized they weren't going to make it in time. The evacuation tunnels were too narrow and too far away. But then he had an idea. "Amy, what about your research on the bonding chemicals? Can we amplify the effect somehow?" Amy understood immediately. She pulled out a small device from her pack. "I've been collecting samples of the pheromones you produce. If I can create an artificial version and spread it through the air." She worked frantically while Danny tried to keep the cubs calm. Enemy voices could be heard in the upper tunnels now. They were running out of time. "Got it." Amy activated her device and a fine mist began spreading through the chamber. The artificial calming chemicals filled the air and the cubs' panic subsided completely. "Now," Danny called out. "Everyone follow me." The cubs moved like a well-trained army, following Danny through the evacuation tunnels while Amy's device kept them calm. Adult Kytherans carried the smallest ones, while older cubs helped guide their younger siblings. They emerged from the caves just as the first evacuation ships arrived. But the enemy wasn't done fighting. More ships appeared in orbit and their leader's voice boomed across all communication channels. "I am Commander Rick Stone of the Hegemony Coalition," the voice announced. "Surrender now, and we might let some of you live." Danny looked up at the stars and realized this had never been about humans versus Kytherans. Someone else had been pulling the strings all along, trying to start a war between two species that could have been friends. The real enemy had finally shown their face. Commander Rick Stone's massive battleship hung in space like a dark metal mountain. It was bigger than anything Danny had ever seen, bristling with weapons that could destroy entire cities. Around it, 11 other hegemony ships formed a deadly circle around the moon. "So the humans and the beast decide to play together." Stone's voice mocked them over the radio. How touching. "It won't save you." Danny stood on the crystal plains of Velthara, surrounded by hundreds of Catharan cubs who trusted him to keep them safe. The evacuation ships were loading as fast as they could, but there were too many cubs and not enough time. Alpha Gronvex fought beside human soldiers, their two species working together like they had trained for years. Kytheran claws and human technology made a powerful combination against the hegemony ground forces. "The last transport is almost full," Captain Wong reported, "but Stone's fleet is powering up their main weapons. They're going to try to destroy the moon with all of us on it." Amy was still spraying her artificial calming chemicals into the air, keeping the cubs peaceful despite the explosions and gunfire around them. "Danny, there are still 50 cubs who won't fit on the last ship." Danny looked at the group of young Kytherans huddled near him. They were the smallest ones, barely bigger than house cats with huge, frightened eyes. Their parents were probably fighting in space above, not knowing if their children would survive. I'll stay with them, Danny decided. If we can't evacuate them all, at least they won't die alone and scared. No, said a deep voice behind him. Alpha Gronvex strode across the battlefield, his black fur stained with battle but his yellow eyes burning with determination. No one gets left behind. Not cubs, not humans, not anyone who fights for the pack. Suddenly, the sky above them lit up with new stars. Ships were arriving from both directions. Admiral Phillips had brought the human fleet, while Matriarch Vesra led the full HFY War armada. Both fleets had figured out the truth about the attacks and come to help. This is Admiral Phillips to all hegemony vessels. The human commander's voice boomed across space. You are surrounded. Surrender now or face the consequences. But Commander Stone just laughed. You think your primitive fleets can match hegemony technology? We have been watching both your species for years, learning your weaknesses. Today we end the threat you represent to our empire. The space battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Human ships darted between the slower hegemony vessels like angry hornets, their precise weapons hitting weak points in enemy armor. HFY ships charged head-on with massive energy cannons that could punch through the thickest shields. But the most amazing thing was how the two fleets worked together. Human captains shared targeting data with HFY warriors. HFY ship commanders used their experience to guide human pilots through dangerous asteroid fields. Each species covered the other's weaknesses. On the ground, Danny watched the battle while keeping the last group of cubs calm. The little aliens pressed close to him, sensing that something important was happening but trusting him to protect them. Look, Amy pointed upward.
Stone's flagship is trying to break away from the battle. The huge hegemony battleship was indeed retreating, but not because it was losing.
Its main weapon was charging up with enough power to crack the moon in half. He's going to destroy Velthara from long range, Captain Wong realized. Even if we win the battle, he'll kill everyone on the surface. Alpha Gronvex growled deep in his throat. My ship, the Howling Wind, has ramming armor. I can stop him. That would be suicide, Danny protested. Your ship isn't big enough to seriously damage his. Perhaps not alone, the Alpha admitted. But with human help, Captain Wong understood immediately. A coordinated ram. Your ship and mine together, hitting different weak points simultaneously. It was an insane plan. Both ships would probably be destroyed, and everyone aboard would likely die. But it was the only way to save the Cubs and stop the hegemony from starting a galactic war. I volunteer to pilot the ramming run, said a new voice. It was Admiral Phillips speaking from his flagship. This is my fault for not seeing the truth sooner. Let me make up for it. And I will guide the Howling Wind myself, Alpha Gronvex declared. My Cubs are on that moon. No force in the galaxy will harm them while I live. Danny felt a strange calm settle over him as he watched the two massive ships break away from the main battle. Around him, the HFY Cubs seemed to sense what was happening. They stopped playing and pressed closer to him. Their small faces turned upward toward the stars where their protectors were flying into certain death. But then something unexpected happened. Other ships began following the two ramming vessels. Human cruisers and HFY destroyers, all flying in formation toward Stone's battleship. All ships, came a voice over the radio. It was a young human pilot. We're not letting the Admiral and the Alpha do this alone. Agreed, replied a HFY ship captain. The pack fights together or not at all. Soon dozens of ships from both fleets were racing toward the hegemony flagship. They had all volunteered for what might be a suicide mission, but they would do it together. Commander Stone saw them coming and tried to fire his main weapon early. The moon-killing blast shot out toward Velthara, but it was intercepted by a brave HFY cruiser that sacrificed itself to absorb the blow. The combined human HFY fleet hit Stone's battleship from 12 different angles. The massive vessel, built to dominate space battles, couldn't withstand the coordinated attack. Its hull cracked, its shields failed, and its weapons went offline. Alpha Gronvex's voice came over the radio one last time. For the Cubs, he roared, and his ship punched through the battleship's main reactor. The explosion lit up space like a new star. When the light faded, Stone's flagship was gone, and the remaining hegemony ships were surrendering as fast as they could. 6 months later, Danny stood in the nursery of New Harmony Station, the first joint human HFY colony. Around him, Human children and Kitharan cubs played together like it was the most natural thing in the galaxy. The cubs still wouldn't sleep until Danny came to read them bedtime stories, but now they were joined by human children who had the same problem. The bond between species had grown stronger, not weaker. After the battle at Velthara, Alpha Gronvex had survived the ramming attack, though his ship hadn't. Admiral Phillips had made it too, and both leaders had become heroes to their people. More importantly, they had become friends to each other. Danny was now the official human Kythran cultural ambassador, splitting his time between Earth and Kithara Prime. Everywhere he went, cubs and children followed him like he was the galaxy's most popular babysitter. Dr. Amy Foster had established research stations on 6 different worlds, studying how different species could bond and work together. Her artificial calming chemicals had led to new medicines that helped treat anxiety and fear in dozens of alien races. Captain Wong, now Admiral Wong, commanded the first joint exploration fleet. Her ships carried both human and Kitharan crews, and they were making discoveries that neither species could have achieved alone. But the best part was the nursery on New Harmony Station. Human babies slept curled up next to Kitharan cubs, while older children of both species learned each other's languages and customs. The sight had become so common that visitors from other planets often stopped, just to watch the peaceful pile of sleeping youngsters. Matriarch Vesra visited the station often, bringing gifts and stories from Kithara Prime. The ancient legend spoke truly, she told Danny one evening as they watched the children sleep. The small ones who bring peace have come at last. Danny smiled, carefully moving a human toddler who had rolled onto a sleeping Kitharan cub. Both children made happy sounds without waking up. I think they bring peace to each other, he said, and to all of us. Outside the nursery windows, ships from a dozen different species came and went from New Harmony Station. The Human-Kitharan alliance had inspired other races to try cooperation instead of conflict. Trade routes that had been closed for centuries were opening up. Scientific discoveries were shared freely between worlds. The galaxy was becoming a safer, friendlier place, all because some alien cubs had refused to sleep until a human came to keep them company. And in the quiet nursery, surrounded by the soft breathing of sleeping children from 2 different worlds, Danny finally understood what home really meant. It wasn't a planet or a place. It was wherever someone needed you to make them feel safe.